Learning happens in the process.
But I think the issue is in supports. And there's also a lot of stigma as well attached to it.
More tips on how they can create the support well-being without feeling overwhelmed or, underprepared on their behalf.
Let's make that worth it. And that's what I talk about adventure. Let's make it fun.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Debjani Mukherjee, and welcome to the Visible Studio. It's a space where we explore the thinking behind what we create. Too often, we focused on the final products or the final outcomes, forgetting the uncertainty, the cushion, the planning, and the process that shapes them. This podcast brings those invisible moments to light. Through conversations with artists, educators, counselors, and thinkers, we unpack not just what we do, but how and why we do it. Because in the studio, as in life, learning happens in the process. With that, I would like to invite a very dear friend of mine for the very first episode of the Visible Studio, Ms Esther Hockey, a well-being specialist. Esther is a seasoned educational leader and well-being specialist with over 8 years of experience in international and Australian context. She has led student support services, developed counseling programs, and built inclusive, culturally responsive well-being frameworks. Her work bridges mental health, education, and lived experiences, bringing together art, self reflection, and adventure as tools for resilience and healing. Her focus is on supporting individuals and communities to navigate the uncertainty with agency, compassion, and adaptability, something that is the need of the hour now. So, without wasting much time, let's move on to Miss Esther. And so, yes, Miss Esther, um, your work brings together well being, art, and lived experiences across cultures. Could you
Yes.
walk us through how you see well being without borders? I guess that's the title of your presentation.
Yep. Thank you so much, Dr. Japjani. Thank you for having me on this special episode. And it means a lot to me because I'm so passionate about sharing my journey as a well-being specialist, being a school counselor, being a mom, and living
Mom of
in
three
different
children,
countries.
three lovely children.
Yeah, 3 kids.
Yeah.
And I still am going through the grieving process of moving back to Australia and leaving behind my international school work life. And but at the same time, my husband is a teacher, and he said, "Why don't you just consider yourself as if you're still in international school, although we're back in Australia and settling into a regional city." But that actually means that that global aspect is still there, like me being a cultured woman and being a leader, and also serving our community with multiple different varieties of cultures. And it's such a privilege to be in that space to serve my local communities. So there's absolutely no borders. Wherever you live, the culture is vibrant. There's happiness, there's joy in every aspects of it. So without further ado, can you see my screen? Wellbeing Without Borders.
Yeah, not
I've
yet,
titled.
but yeah.
Can
Tell
you
us a little
see?
bit more about the places you've stayed.
Yeah. Yeah. Here we go. I was born in South Korea, and my family, my parents moved to Sri Lanka when I was a teenager. So I was actually also an international school student. So I understand that experience of learning English as a teenager and going to a
And as a
different school.
second language, yes.
Learning it as a second
Yes.
language. I didn't even know how to speak English at all, like from A to Z. I didn't even know the alphabet order. So I was like completely lost. And also going through that like challenge of being a teenager and living in a different culture. Like I've never
Completely
like
moving on
stepped
to a
out.
different country altogether.
Yeah, I've never stepped out of Korea until I was 12. So that was my first experience. And then my parents are still there in Sri Lanka. Then I went to a boarding school in India and did my last 3 years of high school there. And then I went to the US, did my bachelor's degrees in counseling. I absolutely loved it. Then I decided to go back to my high school as a gap year student to kind of give back my learning to my high school that I really loved. And then there I met my husband, who was also on IG, a gap year volunteer, and stayed on to be a music teacher. And we met, that was like 16 years ago. And then we decided to return to Australia, like me for the first time moving to Australia. But we had this goal to becoming international educators. So after we had our first child, we adventured to going back to Korea and worked in Jeju Island, and we were working in a British school. Yeah, so it was a really interesting journey. And then I
We
COVID
moved to
hit, and then we went back
India
to
and
Australia. Yeah,
yeah,
and then we
and
started
then
going to
China.
India again, and then I went to China for a year, and then we decided to return to Australia. So that's like a whole,
A
yeah,
lovely journey. And you've picked up so many
yeah,
things from all different cultures.
yeah. I've lived like in 6 different countries, and I find myself. I always tell my people, like friends or people that I meet, it's like I'm yellow on the outside, but I'm really brown on the inside. Because I kind of identify myself more as like Southeast Asian than Korean. I mean, I am still Korean, but I have lived like my teenage years and I have lots of Indian, Sri
Lots of
Lankan,
friends, yes.
Pakistani, Bangladeshi friends. So that's me. Can you see my screen
Yes,
now?
yes. Let's
Yeah,
go
so
ahead with your presentation.
yeah, I think one of the things that I often get asked about is like, how did my journey start as a counselor and what really provoked that interest in me is like, and it's kind of interesting because I had a really lovely art teacher and it came into full circle by the name of Mrs. Humphreys Tracy. And I don't know, like I went to a British school, so I did GCSEs and I didn't even get a good art degree, but I really loved art. And I actually moved to a boarding school in year 11, so in between the GCSE years. So I was like, I can't do two sciences, it's too much. So I changed my subject to physics to art. And so I didn't really have a lot of time to prep, but I just loved the subject so much. But I didn't really get a good grade, but ultimately what really helped me is to get that support from my art teacher who actually saw me as a person and really helped me get through those like transition dark period, all the sad days, and she just like offered a space to really connect with me, and that's what really helped me to be a counselor. When I was a student, I didn't have a counselor in a boarding school, so I know I'm a bit old, but 20 a class of 2005. So I remember going to the US and studying counseling. I'm like, I really want to be a school counselor. I really want to be that teacher or safe person for our young people. So that was my goal, and I've achieved it. And now I am working in Ballarat, and I'm actually leading the team of counselors. And we always like talk about what our passion is. But that is what really got me that teacher. And it's really interesting because when I was working in China, I actually went and saw her, and she's still teaching art. And I said, like, you know what, like I'm now almost like 40, and you're the one who really inspired me to be a counselor. And throughout my journey as a counselor, I really utilized that artistic, the creativity genre of counseling. I've studied play therapy, art therapy, and I really utilized those tools to connect with our young people and their families. So I
This brings
understand
me
like what it
really
means.
two very
Yeah, yeah,
important points that you said. The first, the
yeah,
need that you didn't have at that point in time, and that is why you can emphasize and you know the importance of counseling in today's schools. And the
yeah,
second point you raised, which was again, we'll pick it up later on, especially for art teachers, is that it's not again, we don't want all our students to become artists because what else do we help them do with art? These are some lovely
yeah.
points that you've put on table for discussions. Yes.
And what I love about art is like you don't judge, right? So when we say chaos and uncertainty and unpredictable outcome and things, but still that is art. We just never know what we're gonna get at the end of the day. We have an idea, but when an artist paints a picture or creates something, you just never know what it will become. Even if it's like a destruction or something goes wrong, it still is beautiful. And I think that's like the element of well-being that really resonates with me as well. When I lived through that chaos and uncertainty moving COVID, I've lived in civil war times like in Sri Lanka, and I've lived in tsunami, all these calamities around me. But if I like have the perspective of like, you know what, human life is full of chaos. We cannot separate from that. It's a existential question. And if we separate ourselves from like, you know, what is right and what is good and like this is black and this is white, then we're never gonna achieve like that aspect of like what it means to be human and then living through that process and really evolving into who we really are. So I just don't wanna like label what is good and what is bad. Everything is good, everything is
Yeah, and
bad.
everything
It's
is
how you
great,
look at it.
yeah.
Yeah, everything is beautiful. Everything is supposed to be what it is. And I think when we talk about art or well-being, we try to contain them into borders. We want to contain them into a space, but we can't. That's it's ironic when we are trying to like make it well-being. Well, is there a word bad being? No, we just have to be. You know what I mean? There's all these linguistical connotations of what we see it as good and what do you see as a bad thing. So yeah, so I just wanted to go through some points and I don't want to make it too overwhelmingly like heavy and academic. I'm like a person that want to just send a message and just show what I've
And you
learned.
remember in China, we used to have some lovely walks discussing so much about
Yeah,
well-being and art. And yes, of course, I would want this podcast to be talking more about these questions,
yeah,
that are always not answered in a classroom or a
yeah.
presentation. Yeah.
So I've already answered the
Yeah.
story of where I came from and all of that. But yeah, so I'm a mother of three children, aged between 11 and 5. Now he's just turned 5, and I have a little puppy as well. So as soon as we moved back to Australia, we really wanted to settle, and that was part of our plan to adopt a little dog. So we have Milo with us as well. So yeah, so I just wanted to speak about the reality of chaos, and I know that our educators are going through a lot of challenges, and we have lived through this before, and the whole war in Iran, and but like as a Korean, we've lived through war, like as it's just who we are, because we're still at war, we're at ceasefire, but like Korea has never come to an end like with war, and so my grandfather actually fled North Korea when the war happened, so he's passed now, but he actually joined the South Korean army. So that whole aspect of like fighting and chaos and war and all of that is like it's nature of life, and it's unfortunate, and I really feel like it's so heart-wrenchingly sad,
Yeah,
but
when it
as
becomes war,
humans,
becomes a part of the life. And here, because I'm in
yeah,
UAE, and
yeah,
it's really sad when we get used to the alarms. So
yeah,
imagine a point of time when children, so it's just an alarm, and how
yeah,
scary and how heart-wrenching that can be.
yeah. And that's really interesting. Like we adapt, and there's a human like resilience that we kind of go through, and like we've been through the pandemic. We don't even remember a lot of details now, but there's also that internal war that we fight, the chaos we go through. Like it's like people living overseas, always thinking about relocation and like their identity. And you might be really high functioning and doing really well as a leader, but then internally struggling. There's a lot of unspoken things that I know, like a lot of teachers or educators come to me about their personal struggles, like, domestic violence or having challenging children who's been diagnosed with ADHD or autism and things like that, that we don't really openly discuss. And I think that's a thing that we need to also be open to discussing this, because we don't live in silo. The more we share and make it normal, making a normal experience for humans, I think that's a really good space to be. Like what Brené Brown said, that vulnerability, just being there, say, here's my shit. I mean, look at it. Let's talk about it. And I think that's really important that we kind of bring that to the table. And that whole mental load that we carry as
Also, this
teachers, like
feeling
this.
that you are not alone, even though you
Yeah,
are
you're not
just
alone.
speaking to another person, can feel stronger, thinking that there's
Yeah,
another person facing the same challenges as I am.
yeah,
And
and
also this
that's
question
really
about
good.
self-doubt, that maybe it's not wrong with me, because that is the first thing that comes into your mind.
I think teachers are very good at judging themselves because they want to portray themselves as perfectionistic kind of, and I think that's what they have to kind of do as a teacher, like being in front of like many motivated students. You wanna be that role model and things like
But
that.
in
But
fact, I don't do that in my classroom. In fact, I've seen that when I am more vulnerable to my students and I share my challenges, I think I can get my students to believe in me, trust in me, move this journey with me, rather
yeah,
than making me feel like, oh, okay, I have this perfect, I can just have everything under my control, which is never
I
true.
think that's, yeah, that's a very brave thing to do, because we also have the other aspect of like having to please our parents, right? Because they also strive for educators to be like good at what they do and share, but they might sometimes be, maybe it's a cultural thing, perceive as like teachers being vulnerable as like, oh, they're not good enough to teach our
Yes,
kids and
yes, I
things.
agree that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I want to challenge that. And that's been like the passion of mine, to kind of teaching our parents as well. Like, let's live through this chaos. Like, let's grieve. Let's like not have this like expectations like of perfectionism and on your children, on yourself, on the teachers. Like, let's live through this chaos together. And that's been a really good space for me to work with families as well. And really, like, sometimes like I just literally cried with a parent, and or literally had a breathing session and say, we ain't gonna do nothing but just to be here. So that's what I am really passionate about. It's like not doing a lot, but just being who we are and just holding the space. Yeah, so we have the problem of like huge productivity expectations. Sometimes we ignore warning signs, like, oh, we'll be all right. Um, Nothing's gonna be worse than this, but then it can lead to chronic issues if you're not addressing it. In Australia, we have something called EAPs, so a lot of all employees are entitled to access counselors, and it's all confidential. It's not even tied to the organization. It's all paid for, and they actively encourage to kind of debrief and talk about the issues with a professional. Um, yeah, like we have this attitude of like, yeah, just be resilient, and look after yourself and all of that. Isn't good enough. It's a collective thing. I think what we are like losing is like it's an individual's choice to like looking after themselves and all their well-being, but it's also the responsibility of community. Yeah. Yeah, so what I wanted to talk about is also the aspect of art and creativity and how it ties into well-being. Is like when I studied like counseling and like working with young children, especially when they're in this like phase of learning language and literacy, developing literacy, they actively encourage like the non-verbal aspect of like tapping into their creativity and like really using art, music and all those things, because it does tap into a section of their brain. It's really tied to the neuroscience of really that subconscious programming and expressing without fear. And I've seen like a lot of like children transform, like kids who had like severe like anxiety or like selective mutism or like those things, just well, they they just became a new child and they just had that joy and sparkle in their eyes and connecting with themselves and feeling safe. I think that's a really important thing, like the sense of safety. And I think art and creativity provide that space to be safe. Because imagine that Dr. Japani, you're an art teacher. Can you actually create a piece of art when you feel unsafe?
Yeah.
That's
There are two.
huge.
One is, I'll be honest, that is why I express this feeling about being vulnerable to students, like to tapping into your feelings and then project it on the paper, then
Yeah.
express it on the paper. But
And
yes, that
and
is one
without feeling
aspect.
like they're going to be judged for what they produce. And,
So the
just
constant
being,
challenge is to create the safe space in your classroom where students can be themselves, can
yeah.
express themselves, can have these symbolisms sometimes. So
Mhm.
sometimes the
Yeah.
students come and tell me that, can I use this because I'm feeling that. So
Yeah.
it's there is a, we have, as teachers, we have this responsibility to create that safe space in the classroom,
Yeah.
especially for these
And also,
subjects like arts.
yeah, and as counselor, like
Mm.
I think you can really bridge that gap of like when it's really not safe, how do you actually encourage the student to tap into someone who is more professional in dealing with those unsafe
Yeah.
topics like self-harm and suicide and things. I think as art teachers or music teachers, like they have more sense of like awareness of like opening those topics. And like I see often, like I just completed like the mental health first aid for youth, and they actually bring like art, like portraits of people. Say, can you talk about, what do you see? What do you think this young person is going through? And it was very interesting. They actually use art as a tool to recognize those symptoms and signs. Um, so that's really, really useful, helpful, but like also being vulnerable and being open. It's like, this is beyond what I can do to help you. I think you need to go see a counselor. Like, I can come with you as a safe person.
Yes.
I can sit with you as well. I wouldn't say much, but I know what I can do to help you. I think that's really important, like
So
knowing where you can go.
recognizing that line, and then, at what point do you refer to the counselor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and even if you don't understand like everything, or you've just had that feeling of like, oh, I just don't feel like this student is telling me everything. Can we go to just talk to a counselor? I think that's really important that you don't wait until like I have everything.
Yeah.
You may not never have it. I may never have
Also a
it, but
thin
we might be
line.
able to.
Yes. How much you
Yeah,
probe a child, and then how much would you then move it forward to the counselor? Yes.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and the whole aspect of self-love is really important. I think art is a form of self-love, I believe. And interestingly, all three of my kids, they nominated art as their favorite subject, and I was like really surprised. I'm like, because my older son is like really into maths and science, and he's like, Mom, I love art. And I thought, as a mom, I kind of judged it. I was like, I don't think he's that great. No, but like he loves it.
Yeah.
And he like asked me to go take him to like an art studio, and then he just absolutely loved it. And I think that space to be who he is, and he didn't have to have the time restraint. It was like 2 hours, but then like they let him stay a bit more, and it was really good to see a young, like almost teenage
Yeah, yeah,
boy,
teenage boy
you
to
know,
spend 2-3 hours in a space.
yeah,
So I
sitting
feel
there
the power of
enjoying.
creating, that is
Yeah.
important.
And it was really interesting for me because he once like had an accident on the canvas, and it was like really frustrated and upset. And I'm like, oh yeah, let's talk about it. Like, what do you think we could do to actually like maybe change the color and add something? And he actually like then used different mixtures and things, and like eventually it came to a conclusion. Like, it was
Yeah,
really
to all
beautiful. And
mistakes, like I say, that, it's like life. When a mistake is
yeah,
done, it's done. You can't unwind. There's no control Z for life. All you
yeah.
can
So
do is to take the step forward, say sorry, and make it better. And that's
yeah,
exactly with your canvas. You can't undo
I think
something.
it's also we can do that to other people easier than to ourselves. I think that's where I find it, like that whole aspect of self-love, like
Forgiving your own self,
self-respect. Yeah, and
moving
then being
forward.
compassionate to
Yes.
yourself. And I know, like being brought up as a Korean, like I'm like, what is self-love? What is self-compassion? Like we
And
beat
an Indian.
ourselves.
Oh my God,
Yeah, and I'm
yes.
like, you know, and then like I struggle still in my age. I'm like, oh, I don't feel I'm good enough for my job, or I'm not like good enough mom. But I'm like, well, I need to learn to do what I preach as well. And I think this is a big piece of what I want to share about adventure. Is like life is an adventure. Adventure is like you just never know what you're going to get into. Like, and as international educators, they have the privilege of trying new culture, new food, meeting new people, taking risks, and reinventing their identity and creating lasting memories. Like you can do that anywhere. Like it's such
That's
a
so true. That's a
privilege to be in
blessing
this
to us.
space.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
And holding on
And
to your identity and also celebrating it. International
yeah.
traveling that also gives you that scope of
Yeah.
celebrating your identity. So, which
And
is,
we,
yeah.
life is an adventure wherever you are. Like, I returned back to Australia, but I live like about 2 hours away from Melbourne. So I just take the train down and I'm like, I can go to a Greek town today, or I could go and adventure into other sections of Melbourne that I've never been to. So I still have that aspect of taking adventures wherever I am. And that's really kind of brought me back to like enjoying life as opposed to just like being so into like work and family, but like not having that joy in life. Um, yeah, so adventure is really important, I think. Like, even if you can't get out of your own little house for some reason, you can still do a lot of things like,
Yeah.
cooking, cleaning, even can be an adventure, like reorganizing.
Making
I have,
yourself your favorite coffee and sitting,
yeah.
being that,
Yeah.
watching a
I
movie.
actually see that with my kids, and like they make up some funny games and they have their own rules and they like talk to each other. And like my younger son was telling his sister, I'm like, I want you to win because I like you. And I was like, that is so cute. Like,
Yeah.
wow, that's really cute thing to say. And it's not about competition, but just having that fun aspect of things. I've just committed to paying somebody to reorganize my house and declutter. And, I still have to ask for help. I can't do everything all the time. So, yeah, so I think I just wanted to give like really practical solutions, how to like address all this chaos and all the issues. Is like doing a chaos inventory of like what's going on. Like, when you're going through like the whole shop of like what you got in your shop, and then like what should we order like for the next season, whatever. It's like just making a whole list of what the heck is going on. Like all the internal crap, all your like annoying bosses or your colleagues or like your neighbors and barking dogs and cats or whatever. You can just like listing them and labeling like how it makes you feel can really help you, and determine whether you can or can't change, and then make a whole new list of things that you can do to bring that joy, even if it's like some stupid things like water balloon fights, or you know I remember spending like 3 days in a row doing color by number, things like that. It's really really helpful. So yeah, that's me. That's my email, and if you want to like connect with me, you can
I'll
find me
also
on
share the
LinkedIn. But
details
yeah,
in the
Bob.
presentation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, Esther. Thank you so much for the presentation. That
thank
was
you.
really insightful. And now I have a few questions based on that for you. So, what are the common gaps that you see in the school support system across these international schools?
Yeah, so in international schools, the system's pretty different. I think there's also pros and cons. Um, but one of the biggest gaps I feel is like not having external support, or like not having enough that link to externals to kind of like pick up what they can do to help. And there's also a lot of stigma as well attached to it. Like sometimes the good thing is the parents can afford to accessing like mental health support outside of school, but they feel like, oh, I don't want this to be seen as something that's of, an issue, or like when they go to university, I don't want my child to have mental health issues, so they kind of become very hesitant. So that means that educators and counselors have to actually carry that weight internally, which is kind of really, really difficult because of the sheer volume of students that want to access support. But I think it's a universal thing as well. When I come back to Australia, there are support systems, but they are very overwhelmed as well. So even if it's like a really well set up public funded systems, it's really hard and it's a long wait list to get into. So yeah, like internationally or in other countries, like I can't speak for other countries but Australia that I'm currently working in. But at the same time, not knowing how to refer a student is also an issue. And this is something that like I see a lot, is like not differentiating behavior concerns to emotional concerns is also a really big thing.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and kind of really playing with that, because if we collab and work together, it's really, really amazing, because the child needs to understand rules and boundaries and consequences. And I know there are many dialogues about like the IB approach and everything, but I'm of an opinion that we all humans, we all mammals, we need to learn how that consequence isn't punitive, but it's also allowing a child to understand how their behavior has an impact on other children, other people, and the social aspects of things. And it's really valuable, and educators can do such a good job of addressing rules and boundaries and social skills and things. But at the same time, like counselors are really good at talking about the emotional aspects and like talking about the trauma aspects. Obviously, like, educators are trauma informed, but then it could be led to having a longer conversation, or like having a focused sessions, or like strategies to helping that young person. But I think the issue is in supports, student support services, is like they don't quite understand what we do, what our roles are. So they're like, oh, here's a problem child, here you go, you deal with it. So I see that's a lot of
The question is here in the same one. So how do you think these schools can move beyond the well-being models they already have it in school, like to becoming more proactive and preventive systems, right?
Yeah, and I think it all comes down to relationship. And this is what I always tell, like, Mrs. Humphreys, my art teacher, she was not a trained counselor, but how did she have such an impact on me? And what we say in our world is one safe adult, one safe person, and really co-regulating with the young person, with the student, to sit there and say, hey, let's breathe together. It's not hard. Or like, hey, do you have any like soft toys or like sensory tools? Can you show me what you have? Like even like a little, like a simple thing like a bottle with sparkles in them, and like just shaking and watching it together and talking about it, and that kind of thing is so like valuable, and it's so minimalistic as well. Like, and that's something that we can do. Every teacher or an adult in school, even the canteen lady or the bus driver, they can build that relationship with the young person and noticing what they're going, hey, so and so, who's like knowing the names and say, what's going on? Like, oh, you always do this. Give me that high five, or like, that connection is so, so important. Like, and I don't think it's possible to just like differentiate. We have different roles in our school environment, but that relationship building is so crucial. It's a community driven thing, like not with just teachers and students, but also like peers, or like older students to younger students, and vice versa. I think that's really, really important.
So most of the teachers, we keep hearing them that they are overwhelmed with the curriculum and meeting the deadlines and other things. So can you give the teachers or the educators more tips on how they can create the support well-being without feeling overwhelmed or, underprepared on their behalf? Some more
Yeah.
ideas for them, maybe
I
for
will,
especially
I'll
for a science teacher and an art teacher is a little bit more flexible, but how would teachers from other department work towards such a child?
I I'm just gonna be a bit more like blunt, and sometimes the expectations that the teachers have on themselves about the whole curriculum building, and I know I married a teacher, so I'm an expert on that. They do have that pressure, but sometimes it's really not necessary to feel that much pressure about like being perfectionistic about the curriculum, but like it actually helps. You can teach your curriculum so much better if the young person or the student that you wanted
Is
to
ready
teach
to
are
receive
regulated.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and they feel safe, they want to learn and they want to connect, they feel validated, they are seen. You might be able to teach so much more and enjoy the process of teaching. There's nothing worse than trying to teach a student who doesn't want to
Want to
learn.
learn that. Exactly.
I can't even teach my dog how to sit if he doesn't want to sit.
Yeah.
I mean, like, like I can like read so many books and watch a lot of YouTube clips, but like if the dog doesn't feel safe and they're trying to bite me, I'm not going to be like, hey, you're not leaving my room until you learn to sit. So we have to go back to our primal like instinct of like, you will learn so much more and like become such a better human being and teacher. Like even when I talk to like the teachers of my children who like, and now I'm like a parent, so when I have like parent teacher interviews, I can see the teachers who teach well and who, like my kids have great like grades in that subject, are the ones who actually connect with my child. For example, like my son's science teacher is like really good at like picking up my son's like inside jokes and things like that, and like he makes fun of like the periodic table elements and things. Any teacher would be like, oh come on, let's get serious, like let's like, but she gave that space for him to be who he is, and in return he really loved that subject and the teacher and he's thriving. So it's like a whole like good ecosystem to have, is like once you give that little nugget of trust and that like connection, you will leap so much, and then you will like really enjoy being a
And
teacher and
also,
like,
the love for the teacher can often lead to the love for the subject. And it has happened to me
yeah,
so much. I wanted to be a art teacher because of the love for a certain subject, for a
yeah,
certain teacher.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and it's not, let's not talk about like the achievement aspect of like, okay, like a child can love that subject but may not get an A, or they might just pass, but they still can love. That doesn't mean that you know, you can teach that young person to love that subject. Still is really, really great. You just don't like say, oh no, he's only a C student. I'll just focus on my high performing students. Like, but maybe they might be A student, they might get A plus, or they might really absolutely hate the subject.
Yeah.
So, like really understanding like what learning is about. And we are lifelong learners, right? So why do we want to learn? Is because we enjoy it, we like it, we love it. If you don't like it, you don't have to learn. So I think that's really important that we get to the core of that joy aspect, what makes you feel like, oh my gosh, I want to learn something today, even if it's like a little thing. So yeah.
Thank you. That was a really good answer for that.
Yeah.
And so, I wanted to ask you, like, have you used art as a tool? And how can art be used as a tool for the emotional expression for students, especially for
I
students who struggle to verbalize?
I it's kind of really interesting because like you think of art as like an outcome or like a sculpture or like a, but what I really learned a lot through like play therapy is that process of it. So like for example, And this is something that really triggered me as a counselor, but I had to kind of like overcome that to be able to provide the space and therapy. And was like, for example, if you're using like watercolor or paint or something, I absolutely hate getting things on my hand, like, and getting messy. I just like, but then I had to be a person-centered, a child-centered counselor. So like, I just let our student come in and she will just paint her entire like hands and just like enjoy it, and like just getting so messy and putting tea on and all of that, and that really helped her unpack that anxiety. Like, she had like an issue of like plucking her hair, and she was only like 6 or 7, like, but she has so much anxiety built up. But using that tool as art is like really that satisfaction of like sensory as well, and looking at the colors and like having that journey of like not having somebody like over like seeing it as a mess or like something to be corrected, really liberated her to like really focusing on like who she is and how she can connect through that medium. And eventually she stopped plucking hair. She had no other symptoms, and I didn't ever address her real issue. I never talked about it. But because her hands are occupied doing something that she loved, and she didn't feel judged, she didn't feel like there was a need to be corrected. She absolutely loved that and just enjoyed it. And when I have this like magical moments with children, is that when they're like humming and singing at the same time and while doing it up, it's like I feel like that goosebumps of like they're really going in that healing journey.
That mode, yes.
Like that subconscious like level of like almost like a spiritual like chant, almost they're creating something using their entire body.
Yes.
Like they're using their voice, they're using their art, they're using their hands, and like that's like really, really beautiful. Like, so art and music and all these creative things that is so readily available. You don't need a lot of things. It could just be like water or mud, or it could be anything you can find in nature, creating stories out of them. And I think that Dr. Debjani, like, you're pretty an expert in using those kind of tools and things. I think we could utilize more of that in classroom settings.
Yes. Yeah.
Even if it's like so simple, even if like bring anything to write your notes, or like bring, I don't know, writing things on the desk and like putting things on the wall, and like having like less structured instruction-based things, but more creativity-driven
More free
instructions.
flowing that goes.
Yeah,
I
and
have this class
subconscious.
here in my present school, which is students who have autism, and I have introduced a series of classes working with clay. And in one hand, there were a few students who love the medium and the mess that comes with clay, the water making it, muddy and unpredictable. And there were a few students who did not like that the clay in their hands. And I saw them, I was observing the class as it went, these two different groups of children with their different methods of working with clay. They were just working with the fingers so that the minimal of their body, one would also ask for a mask, for these gloves that they could be using. And they worked with the fingers. And eventually, that mess kind of captivated them. And, they wouldn't put it all over the body, but they were fine to work without gloves and have the texture of the fingerprint on the clay, getting deeper with connecting with nature. So, yes, I've seen that practically right in front of me. And just within like 3 to 4 weeks, you can see that.
Yeah. And I think that word you actually spoke is absolutely precious, is observation and watching and seeing and being that curious educator. Is like, oh wow, I wonder why they did this. I wonder what's going in their head. I wonder what kind of family they grew up in. I wonder how their interactions with their siblings are like. I wonder how their cultural aspects are really influencing their whatever behavior or like their learning, So that's really important to have like the observation. Like that's what we do as well-being staff members, is like
Yeah,
even though we talk.
observe a child with a certain medium, with a material,
Yeah,
and how and why they
yeah.
react to it.
And we do a lot of those assessment phase of like really connecting with that person and observing
Mm.
and noticing, hey, you're saying this word. What does that mean? Like, I noticed when you said this, your body language was this. Can you tell me about that? And just really being curious. And I think that art artist mindset is like you're really good at observing. Art starts with observation first.
Observation, exactly.
Yeah, you have to watch and see and observe the colors, textures, and everything. Happens before you actually produce is observation. So that aspect,
Observation, then connection, then you
yeah,
empathize, and then you can create.
create.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's really good to have that attitude of curiosity. Yeah.
And that brings me to this next question about you were talking about self-love in your presentation, and
Mm.
repeatedly that term was coming up. So, what does self-love look like in practice for the present young generation? I'm talking about teenagers.
Yeah, and I see that a lot happening in my world. And unfortunately, this generation is craving for more love and connection than ever,
And
safety,
yet
security.
denying the physical connection and getting more into the phone and the devices and this
Yeah,
virtual connection. So, where do you start with that? Do you judge them at there, or we go one step further in making that nature connect or the human connect come closer? How do you navigate that?
I think like for some of the things that like I see often is what you see on the surface is not what's inside. So, for example, I'm going to be blunt, there's a huge prevalence of self-harm. And a lot of times educators get really like, oh my gosh, the panic and then the cutting and they're bleeding or something and they get scared and they're like judging and it's like, oh my gosh, like what they just don't know what to do. But like deep down, they're really lacking that aspect of connection and let love. And love happens with safe attachment, secure attachment. And they may never have had that experience from their first primary carer as a young child. So if you teach a person to love themselves, they're like, I don't know what that is. And so we have to like really break down. It's like, okay, let's go back to like, what do you do? Like if you like somebody, if you like something, you kind of like help them eat, help them go to sleep. Have you ever had a pet or like, they are craving that connection with something. So I really break it down to like, okay, let's just do one thing. Like you coming to school is also showing, self-love. You coming and like talking to me is an expression of love, and I really like make that little connection and like, and
One
then the
block
little
at a
nuggets of
time.
like, yeah, and because it's such an overwhelming concept for young people, like especially what you said is that they're disconnected through social connection, social media and things like that, but they're really craving that love that they haven't experienced. So I just like break it down and say, well, if you can't love yourself, then just do self-care first. Like just do simple things and like make it a game, make it a little thing to like let's experiment. Let's see what happens if you went to bed regularly and let's experiment. Let's do well-being check-in every morning. Like I'm not expecting a huge, thing, but that's an aspect of self-love. Like if you come to school, come to Wellbeing, let's have a chat, let's check in. That's also really giving them a good sense of like safety and security. It's just be 5-10 minutes. What's your goal for the day? So that's a conversation that educators can also have is like, and kind of checking at the end. It's like, how was your day? How did it go? And that really makes them feel like, oh my gosh, I'm worthy.
Yeah.
I think that is really important that like kids don't feel worthy. They cut themselves and they feel like I don't deserve love because they've been conditioned that their performance or whatever the expectations that families have, they've been conditioned to believing that worth is tied to that. So it is a very strange concept to grasp, but just to coming back, it's like you're put on earth for a reason. let's make that worth it. And that's what I talk about adventure. Let's make it fun. Just for today, here and now. So yeah.
That's a very good point to reflect and look at what educators can do, and how do they start the class, how do they start this learning space, how they get the students into that mode of accepting and the wanting to learn. That stage has to be reached. And yes.
And can I be honest, and educators also have to understand, give themselves love as well. And it's kind of abusive to themselves to be workaholic.
Yeah.
And not looking after themselves, turning up to class half so tired, and not presenting themselves happy. Kids can pick up on it. So I think that's really important to kind of see, if I go to work, I am human too. I have really tough, but in any given day or time when I go to work, I dress pretty nice. I put my makeup on, and I'm always have a happy face, because that's the face that they will see and they want to connect with. So that's really important. I sell myself as somebody who's available and warm and kind, so that they are
approachable and
approachable and friendly and funny and humorous, and sometimes that little connection I had with kids in the playground, or
outside the classroom, outside
the class, even, and that they know who I am, and this is mind-boggling. It's not what I do as a counselor talking about how you feel about it today. They know what I did, to say, hey, I noticed you're new to school. No wonder you don't know the rules. Or kind of really know. It's oh, you know that I am new. You noticed, you observed.
Yeah.
And next time they see me, it's oh, hey, I don't know who you are, but you're not that nice teacher who knew me. They actually say that to me.
One small thing.
You're my favorite person because I noticed them and I connected with them, and I'm demonstrating that to them. So that's really important to me. Yeah.
And this gets me to this another question, in this fast, constantly changing world, and a world with, say, for students living in these high functional cities where everything is available with a click of a button, and they are in that affluent zone. How, what skills do you think that do these young children need to stay grounded and connected to nature, to self-love, to parents, to the community? What are the suggestions? How can they stay connected?
I think the biggest word that pops in my mind is contribution.
Yeah.
And you can contribute in small or big ways. And that's really, really important. What can you to contribute to making this world a better place, or making this
finding the
classroom
purpose.
a better place? Yeah, purpose. And also really sense of responsibility as well. And you can also, if you don't know how to contribute to big things, pick up the rubbish. Why? Because you want to be a contributing member of this beautiful community. And it's you're actually that intrinsic motivation, right? So you want to make sure that it's not oh, you're a good person, good boy, good girl. It's not going to cut it. But collectively, what are we going to, you make a little contribution, and then someone else makes a little contribution, and that actually adds to the layer of everybody taking responsibility. And I think kids crave that. There are all these psychological experiments. When they are awarded, they don't want to do it. They're oh, I got $50 for doing this test, and I don't want to that. But if they say hey, this is a really good project, let's do it together, and let's make it a really fun thing, and if you do blah blah, and they will want to continue on doing that because they feel that sense of belonging, connection, community, and their motivation is not killed by getting that reward, and that's it. So I think that's really important. When I worked with across affluent or totally on the other spectrum of underprivileged or not having enough financial or economic background, the sense of belonging and value and what they can contribute to is so important.
Ingrained.
So I would go with that. mini projects, doing murals or anything like that.
Finding your call, that building that community, working together, finding that purpose. Yes.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
I see that over and over again. They just
And
want to
and
give
it's
back.
interesting to hear that it works in both the spectrums of the different economic scale, coming from that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's
And
really interesting because like we all human. That's
you
why
was
we
talking about adventure in all of this,
mm,
and there is adventure when students take up their own purpose or make mistakes, they learn from them. So, all of these adventure in any form, how can it contribute to their emotional growth and resilience? A more direct question of where we left in the last one, and how would it directly contribute to their growth?
yeah, so if you go on an adventure, there's always a risk that you have to
Yeah,
take.
yeah.
So whether you're going on like Week Without Walls or school trips or
Or these
going
passion
overseas.
projects that you were talking about, when they do
Yeah,
something to contribute, this contribution, there is a moment
yeah,
that they fail or they make a mistake, or even that can be a form of an adventure. So, how do
yeah.
they kind of help the students?
Well, I think if you look at the entire life as an adventure, is like a really interesting thing, and I kind of almost like a spiritual aspect as well. Like we're not just here just to, study, and you got to think beyond what's going to happen after you graduate. How can you plan your adventure? What's your end goal? What do you want to do in life? And I think that's a really important question to say. If you had no barriers, no, just imagine, just make, if you're a character in a scenario
Yeah.
and if you feel like you could be successful, how would that character behave and plan their adventure?
Hmm.
And really use that imagination to like going through these challenges and what we call like hero's journey. It's like you will go through a challenge, you'll go through the mud, it will rain, but how can you solve these issues rather than like getting to A to B is not what we want to do. It's
So
like,
these
how can you use
discomforts that the students face in their
yeah,
life that actually contributes to their growth.
of course. And then the growth can go, it doesn't always go up. It can go down too, but then still you're growing. It's like a
You're
spiral,
learning from
like
your
it goes up.
mistakes. It's spiral, yes.
Yeah. And also like contributing to someone else's growth
Oh,
is
that's a very
really
good point.
important.
Yes, yes.
You're helping other people grow.
Yeah. And
That's what
growing
I really
together.
love about like
Yes.
the well-being space. And also you're helping the educators grow in their journey as you teachers. And I love that aspect of like when I had teachers come to me and said, hey, I've been a teacher for many, many years. But then when I see you talk to a student and talking about the culture and all this stuff, I am fascinated. I want to learn more about this. Can you show me? Can you do us a PED? I want to grow in this area. And it just like makes me feel so happy. And I feel the same as well. Sometimes like I don't know a lot about this aspect. I want to learn and grow. I think that professional development element is really important as well. And that sense of adventure is like we're all on an adventure together, right? So if you fall down, I'll be here to pick you up. I'll be here to like help you out. And or like we'll just sit in the mud for all day and just throw like snowballs at each other. That is
These
a-okay
PDs, they
too,
don't come once in 6 months or once in a year. It's an everyday journey, like an ongoing learner.
Yeah.
And the students and
Yeah.
teachers, and we're all learning from each other.
I had a really interesting exercise I did as a play therapy course, and we had puppets that time, and then we all just pick one, and it was very simple. We go around the room and said like, what's your one problem, and how can I solve it? And then like they just took, and it was just out of just whatever you have to come in your mind, but obviously you're quite emotionally tied to it. And then somebody else comes and says, can I help you do this to help you solve this? And that could be a really fun exercise to do.
Amazing exercise.
And helping, like you don't have to solve your problem by yourself. You can solve it with someone else. Or like, oh, maybe that person has a tool. let's connect with that person. And it's like a collective way of solving a problem. And that's what adventure's about. You might just go solo. You might go in a team. You might lose somebody in the way. Someone might go somewhere else. Like you and I, we were working in China together, and I'm in Australia and Dubai. We still connect,
And
and
still learn from each
nothing is
other.
lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what's really important is like having that sense of adventure and connections with each other, and say, yeah, you want to come in an adventure with me? Like actually had a person who suddenly appeared in Ballarat who I knew from Mumbai that I was friends with. You never know. It's like life is funny. Like you can connect with anybody everywhere now. So yeah, I think that's really important that we actually promote that sense of, connection. And the world, it has no borders now, so you
Yeah.
can connect with anyone anywhere. So
That's so
yeah,
true. And I really like your exercise, especially the using of puppets, because it's a tool that I use in my classrooms. And sometimes you need that detachment. I always
yeah,
have this exercise where you step into being an artist and then detach yourself from being that artist to being an audience and then critiquing your own
yeah.
work as an outsider. So stepping into the shoe
Mm.
and coming out like the puppet, that's amazing. And I guess that sometimes that
Yeah,
students, it really helps them, to
yeah,
imagine that stepping out and stepping in into different shoes.
yeah. And I think that's like, again, you can always recreate your own identity as well. Like some of the things that we do in therapy spaces that I've used is like we just picking a new name, simple as that. Like,
Yeah.
what do you want to call yourself? What would you call like me? And that is like really fascinating to see like that a whole new identity can be created. Like if you're running an art class and say, hey, today we're gonna just do a fun exercise. We
Yeah.
we pick a new name for whoever, and just yeah, and that's really fun. And then you can also like as say my name is Esther, but today my name is gonna be like spicy raccoon or something. I don't know. I make up something. As a spicy raccoon, what would I do? Like, and I like, okay, so I can kind of utilize that identity to bringing more creativity and come something outside of my own judgment of myself.
And
So
it's
you could
true, the
always
students
use
are used to
different
it. They're constantly using these avatars with new names and they're
yeah, different
creating their
names,
identity.
like pet
Yes.
names, yeah, alter ego names, and all those sorts of things. They're more creative than me, yeah. So I think that's really important that we always give them an opportunity to be selecting the new, recreating their own identity and living that reality of we're always evolving, like the world is changing fast, rapidly. So we need to adapt to that as well. So yeah.
So, one last question for you is what is this one small shift, that students and educators and individuals can make today to support their well-being journey? If they have to do one thing, one day, let's just break it down with this entire presentation we had. What is that one thing that they can do to help themselves?
I would say is connection to themselves and to each other. Is always asking that questions like, what do you need? And sometimes it's as simple like say self-love. And sometimes I'm like, I ask myself, what do you want to do? What is something that you want to do today? Instead of like what other people or kids or whatever, what do you want to do? What do you want to go and eat? What do you want to have coffee? Like what is it what you and I
Like speaking
deeply
to
have to
yourself,
ask
you're
myself.
saying, yes, connecting to your
Yeah,
own
it's
self.
like, and really honoring that. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't want to do that today. I want to go take myself to a movie. I want to get myself a cappuccino and then do it. Or like asking that question to another person. It's like, hey, Johnny, let's go out for coffee and let's honor that. Let's go out and do that one connection at a time. And I think that's a really good thing to step out of that whole complication with well-being and this whole, just connect. Just do one thing and honor that and continue to do it. Maybe we can do it with another person and then we can do it with collective. We can do it with the department. We like counseling department. Last year we went to the hot spa or something. We're all sitting in the spa together and went the cold plunge together because we're like, what the heck we want to do? And we all turned up sitting in the sauna. And that's what we did.
Yeah.
Just a little thing, not much, but how fun is that? We always do that. And in my team now, we always connect. We have morning briefings every day. We connect with each other. We have team meetings. We also do fun things. We do socials. We do a lot of small micro kindness. I sometimes fill up like the little jar with candies or, it's like, yeah, let's, the little things of, post-it notes. So like we do like stupid things like that, but that really helps, that connection and little activities of fun. It's really important, like then big things. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this session. Thank you for joining in this adventure with me and building this connection and continuing this connection. So
my pleasure.
Looking forward to connecting again. And
do connect with me. Anybody who's watching, I'm on LinkedIn. You can send me a DM. We can continue to like work together. If you want to just have somebody to bounce off ideas or ask me questions, I'm available. I'm going to be launching new programs as a coach as well. So I wanted to give that opportunity to people to just tell me what you really want to do, so then I can create a program to address all these questions.
Yeah. So you were talking about this coaching series. Can you talk a little bit more so that our viewers can also connect with you and build on that?
Yeah. I mean, I love my day job, but then I feel like a bit limited in the space because like I've lived across so many cultures and things. So I really wanted to give that opportunity to anybody who's living in global context and thinking about well-being and how do we recreate that identity and set goals and things. And I wanted to like create a program that we can connect with each other, like what we were discussing today, and like really having that that tangible space to be safe, but also ask questions and grow. Because I feel like I've grown as an individual educator, as a mom, when I connected with like-minded people. So I wanted to give that space to people who want to connect, and we learn from each other. And I would love to like give that space and support people, and so that they can grow and they can also help other people. So yeah, that's my little niche, second, what do you call that, side hustle?
Passion. Yeah, your passion. Yes.
Yeah, like what you do as well.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
Yeah.
So thank you once again, and let's connect soon. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.